end interviews, our end of the season exit interviews with some of the outstanding members of the Sacramento Kings media. And I don't know that anybody works harder at it than our next guest, who used to work here. I've known him forever. He used to work here. I think he was a producer in the afternoons. And you know him from his work on podcast, Kings Pulse podcast, and also, of course, Fox40. Sean Cunningham. How are you, Sean? Sean, my boy, how are you?
My boy, Whitey J. Good to see you guys. How are you enjoying the early off season so far?
Yeah. Sean, it's funny because that first, Friday they lose to the Pelicans, and then Saturday morning, the playoffs are today. I'm not watching any playoffs. And that lasted until I think the Nuggets and Lakers were on that night. Then I watched, but all day long, it's like, I'm not watching any playoffs. So it took me a while, a couple hours to warm up to the playoffs after the bitter disappointment of another loss to the Pelicans.
Oh, for sure. And I love when, I hear from, previous people of power, bosses, what have you, no matter what job you're in, and they go, Sacramento, it's not really a sports town or whatever. And then you look at like ratings of not only NBA, but NFL and UFC and things like that. And it's always just in the top 5 always. So we're starved for sports out here. So yeah, even though the Sacramento Kings may not be in it, it's still an NBA market. They're going to roll with the punches and see how the West shape takes fold. And because this Western Conference this year was just a monster.
Sean, do you think there's a big name out there that realistically the Kings would have a shot at? Perhaps not. I don't mean to ask you a leading question, but do you think there are any names or a name out there that they could pursue legitimately if they wanted?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I mean, maybe not necessarily in free agency, but I think everyone realizes, if you're a Kings fan or if you've been in this market long enough, that this organization typically makes its biggest splash when it comes to trades. And I don't know that many people were thinking that Domantas Sabonis was going to be a trade candidate or even possibility for Sacramento when it happened. I think so much of the conversation was centered around the likes of Ben Simmons and things of that nature. And that went on to seem like for a year. And then if you even rewind further back, the Peja Stojakovic, Ron Artest trade that seemed to be bannered about for about 2 years, greater part of 2 years before it happened. So yeah, I think, especially when you come off a season the way the Western Conference was and everyone realizing how they're going to have to be aggressive, and 48, 50 wins may not be what you thought it would be a year ago, or maybe what you thought it would even be this season. It's clearly when a team like the Kings finishes down there in 9th. So yeah, I do think, every year presents opportunity, and all you have to do is just be aggressive. And the fact that they've got essentially all their draft picks still just sitting there to as draft capital, and really to be unloaded if they choose to do so for the right opportunity.
So you got to give us a name or two, brother. I know we're speculating.
Put the pressure on.
Yeah, you got to give us a name or two.
Yeah, I think one name that I think just in the early going that I've kind of identified, there's certain situations, right? So like, you look at the success that the Timberwolves have had, and all of a sudden you've got the likes of Anthony Edwards, who's going to be a max player. You've got 2 guys who are making over $100 million. Like, how far into the luxury tax and apron are they willing to go? And I think what teams who have success in this league, what they have to wrap their head around is the fact that if you want to play ball and you want to be a contending team, well, then you're going to be in that luxury tax. You're going to be in those aprons, and it's going to, cost you a ton of money to compete. And certainly I think Oklahoma City is one of those teams where it's shown that may not be the case for them, because they're only really paying 1 star a max contract at the moment. But certainly a few years from now, that'll change. And they've got a whole lot of draft equity in the way they've built their team. So they're a younger team competing, finishing first in the West. But, I identify Minnesota. It's like, what are they going to do with Karl Anthony Towns? How deep are they going to go? I'm not even a Karl Anthony Towns fan, to be honest with you. But if you look at New Orleans, certainly how they've built, everyone follows that Denver model, and it's the teams that have given the Kings absolute fits, size, athleticism, length, and the Kings are desperate for a player of all 3 of those categories. And you look at the likes of Herb Jones and Trey Murphy, and certainly Trey Murphy's not going anywhere. Herb Jones has got a relatively, great contract. But what happens to Brandon Ingram? What happens with Zion Williamson? I mean, I think it's too soon to even kind of entertain parting ways with him. But I think New Orleans is one of those teams that makes makes some sense for the Kings to chase after someone. And then, I know a lot of people would love to see the Kings go after someone like Mikal Bridges, just the ultimate team friendly contract for a star in the making or still on the rise. And if I'm Brooklyn, I'm looking at that going, why the hell would I get rid of Mikal Bridges and try to,
I know.
It's just so, but there's another guy named Miles Bridges, which if you take the off the court stuff aside, I think he still looks as this diamond in the rough, so to speak. So I don't know. I to give you a name would be tough because
you gave us a couple.
I think
That's fair.
Yeah, to me, I think we didn't even talk about Jimmy Butler. My God, I mean, a guy who's a little older, but certainly you can see where he would fit on this team, who just averaged 25 and 5 and is still a absolute beast defensively. And even though he's older, he's got a to him. I think he still has 100 million over the next 2 years. So yeah,
Jay is really excited about the possibility of Lou Dort. I think.
Hey,
big Lou Dort guy.
But a tremendous defender. But where's he? Yeah. Why would they let him go? Why would they let him go?
I know. We're just kidding because every time every 5 minutes today, Lou Dort's he's talking about like Lou Dort. So I'm kidding. But Jay's been talking about Lou Dort.
I have no idea why Lou Dort has popped up on this show like 10 times today. Joined by one of the best to do it, not only local, but of course nationally. I always say it's Sean Cunningham, FOX40. Sean, I think when we look back at this year, Keegan took a lot of steps forward. I would imagine some people, if not looking at the games and just looking at the box score, what we absolutely despise here on the Drive Guys. But I thought he was asked to do a lot more defensively than he was offensively. But with that being said, do you see him maybe taking the necessary step in the third year to being the guy that the Kings probably need him to be, or do you think they're going to continue to ask him to be a two-way guy?
Yeah, I think they're going to continue to ask him to be a two-way guy for sure, and I think that's a good thing. I think being that two-way player, being able to guard the likes of the Steph Currys of the world and, three positions at times bodes well for his development. And that's one of the reasons why, looking at the 50,000 foot view of this team, it's like you're asked whether it's a failure or not, and it's certainly they'll all use the word disappointment, but when you see a guy like Keegan Murray who takes that type of step forward, and yeah, the 3-point shooting may have dipped a little bit, but his scoring was still up, got to the free throw line a little bit more. There are certainly things that leap off the page for someone like his development. And you compare him to other players that have really taken steps forward. And for some reason, Chris Middleton is always that guy that people like to compare him to and watching that growth. And it took Chris Middleton a little while. And I think he's well ahead of that. I mean, a guy who just finished with 15 points a game and like I said, maybe take those steps defensively, and a guy who didn't really ever have to play that way in college or high school. So knowing that people were talking about you look at I said last year, if Keegan Murray could really just duplicate what he did in his rookie season, people would be through the moon. I mean, it may not be the step that they want him to take, but year 3 is really in the NBA where a player tends to make the biggest impact in terms of when you look back at his career. That third year was the year where you said, all right, this is what that player looks to be for the remainder of his career. And that's where he really starts to kind of chip away at one of the things he can be. So that's why, people who try to analyze a draft and give him a draft grade after 1 or 2 years, it's really tough. I get it, but I think the criteria is just different. So if he can continue on this path, I think there's people that want to see him be a 20-point scorer, and I certainly think he can be part just on him. I mean, people I talk to all the time, it's like they're looking at Keegan Murray and ultimate teammate, nice guy, but you got to go and get it. And you got to look at some of the guys on your team and say, no, I'm taking this opportunity. And I'll take a step further, Jay, even on the offensive end. The way he found opportunity can really even later in the season doing with some injuries, but kind of going ISO, kind of attacking the paint a little bit, even finding a mid-range. Those are things that just make you go, oh, this is great. Especially with the way they move the ball, scoring opportunity aplenty will be great for him. And if he can do it on the both ways, everyone's looking for those types of players.
Sean Cunningham with us. And it's really interesting to me what you said about Minnesota. And obviously, what you're talking about. So that's no surprise there that you bring them up. But as you know, you got a situation here with Mark Lore and A-Rod, and they may be buying the team from Glenn Taylor. There's some dispute there, but they've already declared that if they get the team, they're going to lower the payroll. So that's why you think, well, they would have to let somebody go. So yeah, the Karl Anthony Towns stuff, makes more sense than some of just the idle speculation. All that said, Sean, in your opinion, if Malik goes, does that put more pressure on the Kings to then go out and bring in one of the bigger names, in your opinion?
You're damn right it does. And
Yeah.
I think, and I think it's definitely a possibility. And it's something that the Kings, fortunately for them, have had really over a year to kind of navigate those waters. And I think fans and this team alike was a little bit of a blessing in a way to kind of see what this team looks like as currently constructed without both Malik and Kevin. I don't know if they wanted to see it at the same time, but particularly Malik, who I always sound like a broken record because I say he's the most important player on this team because of the identity he gives them, the way people feed off of him. Certainly, you know what you're going to get from Fox and Sabonis every night. But when Malik is on, this team looks like a world beater at times. And when he turns the ball over, or it doesn't even matter what scoring to me. I think it's all playmaking and kind of the swag that he brings to that team, and they just absolutely feed off it. And if he's turning the ball over and doesn't have that, they go the other way. And particularly when he's not playing, I think there was no bigger argument for his 6 man of the year candidacy than when he was hurt and watching his team kind of flounder. So, I think they've had the opportunity to not only see what it looks like, but navigate those waters if in the event Malik leaves, and certainly do some, hints and shoulder bumps, and maybe you treat somebody a little bit nicer to dinner than you would have normally, whatever it takes to try to keep him and his camp happy, because they know they're going to be competing with some beasts out there that have cap room, and you've got handlebars. I used to, when I worked in the mortgage industry, you always called it prepayment penalty. You had handlebars. You couldn't go do anything, and that's what the Kings are right now.
Sean, looking at, and you touched on Kevin Huerter a little bit, just mentioning his name, and Malik Monk, who obviously he's said numerous times, and of course you're there every single time, that he wants to start. If Malik comes back and Kevin Huerter is back, and now we've seen Keon Ellis take a step, and I'm not sure if he's a starting two guard, but who starts for this team in your eye, knowing what you've seen this past year and moving forward to next year? Let's just say all 3 of those guys come back.
Yeah, I mean, I could envision worlds and situations depending upon what this roster looks like, where each of them have opportunity to start. But I think that's what the coolest thing about Malik is like, in talking to him over the 2 years he's been here, he's always had a desire to start. It's not like this. I know people heard that press conference and he'll say like, yeah, I want to start. And it's like, oh, see there, that's just a checklist on the list for him to go out and find the right opportunity for him. But he realizes like he'll do whatever the team needs for him as long as he's playing starter minutes is always the kind of the biggest thing, and closing games, that'll be the biggest thing. But yeah, I mean, starting's important. I think especially probably more so. I think Malik realizes this too with someone like Kevin Huerter, where Kevin Huerter getting out to an early good start only benefits the team in just the most, positive way. Whereas Malik can come in and turn it on in a minute, be that microwave and get going, and also have that impact as a playmaker as well. So I think he realizes it. And I think, him also saying in the same breath, I'll do whatever my team needs me to do, but yeah, I'd like to start. That's been the same since when he landed in Sacramento too. So I don't know how much that'll play a role. Certainly if he's I don't know that Malik is, I think payday first and foremost is going to be the biggest factor for him in security and in longevity, because he's a guy who he knows his past just like everyone else. He believes he was out of this league just not that long ago. And for him to have that security, have a team that wants him, and being able to flourish in that system, whether, wins and losses are there, I think that's great. But he can look at a situation of a team on the rise or a team that's not as good as Sacramento and feel that he could be a part of turning that around. So it sounds like I'm speaking out of both sides of my mouth, but that's what Malik does. He wants to start, but ultimately wants to be in Sacramento. And if someone had asked me a while back, they're like, well, what if they just said, hey, you're going to start now, and here's what we can do. I just don't think they need to do that. I think Malik would recognize doing what's best for the team is going to help them the most. And I don't know that Malik would agree that having him start would be what's best for the team, at least to the way the team's constituted. Now, if you have a crystal ball and tell me who's on that team next year, I guess we can see, but I can certainly see it.
We might have a crystal ball. Dave has all kinds of garbage back here.
Yeah. I don't know if it works.
So, yeah. What's your sense? Yeah, Girth Brooks, as we call Dave these days. What's your sense of how soon the Kings get the Mike Brown situation resolved?
The Mike Brown situation, is that what you said? It kind of broke up a bit.
Yes, yeah, Mike Brown.
Yeah,
Yeah. No problem.
Yeah, I think it has, whether it does or it doesn't, you have to get to an understanding quick. And I said this kind of coming out of the press conference, which is, if you already know that he's not your guy, you got to let him go. And not that I think that they would do that, but Mike Brown going into a season next year as a lame duck would be really.
There's no upside, right? There's just no reason to do it.
Well, Whitey and Jay, you guys both know this, man. Like, if you think of NBA players, and there's agents everywhere, right? When it comes to coaches, you've got like three dudes basically represent all the league's coaches. And how do you tell those agents who all have clients that you'd be interested in possibility going forward, like that? For all Mike Brown hasn't changed. Mike Brown was coach of the year last year. Yeah, they missed the playoffs here, but picking up getting extension, picking up whatever it is, getting to some sort of agreement to where he goes into next season not as a lame duck head coach, that just is the smart business sense to do, even if you end up firing the guy. Like, clearly this team, one of the things I give this organization credit is when they know the time has come, they make the move. And, you can criticize those moves, right or wrong. Obviously the Michael Malone thing has been, dissected so many times, but they've had a history of paying coaches not to coach. So I think they'll do the right thing. I think they'll do right by Mike Brown. And I mean, if you're talking continuity, well, he's absolutely a part of that. So certainly you can sit there and have people who might be critical of the way they played last year, slipped a little bit offensively in terms of pace and offensive efficiency. But at the end of the year, you also did what I think everyone was hoping you do, and that's become a better defensive team. Now, it came at maybe the detriment of making the playoffs, but you're only 2 wins different in the wins-loss column than you were a year ago. So there is continuity all over the board. There's improvement all over the board. And yeah, it didn't result in the postseason, but you got to see what year 3 looks like, and I don't think he can do that comfortably going in as a lame duck head coach without having some guarantees there.
Joined by Sean Cunningham, Mr. 40 himself. Sean, before we get out of here, we got to talk Kendrick Lamar, Drake real fast, because even Whitey has been, even him and Jerry Blevins have asked about what's going on. When you have Whitey and Jerry Blevins asking me what's going on between K-Dot and Drake, we have a conversation.
It's no fight. It's a total mismatch. I mean, no, Drake is right. I mean,
spin it. What you got?
Kendrick destroyed him.
He did.
Did he not? You eviscerated him. It's not even a contest. I don't know. You tell me. Am I right?
Kind of.
100%. 100%. Kind of, Jay.
Well,
Jay.
I'll say this. Well, no, you're the guest. I'll let you speak.
No, I want you. Trust me. We are on a group text where we talk about this all the time. So Jay has insider trading knowledge here of some of my thoughts. He knows I'm also not the biggest Drake fan, but I will say
neither am I. Yeah.
Boy, I mean, you're talking about a guy. I mean, in Kendrick Lamar, you talk about 2 totally different upbringings and backgrounds, and that's the guy you want to go at. Like Drake, who is this, Canadian, great social health care. You've got TV shows, and you look at Kendrick Lamar, or you're looking at him, and it's like, no, you're literally the living embodiment of what South Central and Compton look like and act like and everything like that. And so for him to call Kendrick Lamar pop when Drake is literally brought hip hop music into the pop hemisphere is just insane to me. You're going to pick at a guy's height, but you're going to champion Lil Wayne and Big Sean. That's wild to me. And then to have a guy like Kendrick Lamar get featured verses with like the likes of Maroon 5 and all the Taylor Swift,
right?
And then you're going to champion Travis Scott and SZA, both who have collaborated with Maroon 5. In fact, Travis Scott was at Maroon 5's Super Bowl in Atlanta in the Super Bowl performance. So just these wild inconsistencies. And it's like, okay, all you're saying is, yeah, you make money. Sure. You're the Taylor Swift of your male dominated field. And there's room for both of you. And I just love that Kendrick Lamar woke up this morning and said, and another thing upon with another
bright and early.
Just so great. I'm here for it. And I just like that everyone's kind of looking at Drake a little sideways. It just kind of makes me smile.
Yeah, it's entertaining. It's and to be honest, like I hadn't woken up to even wake my daughter up for school yet. And I wake up and I look over and the wife is like, Kendrick dropped again. I'm like, what? He, as Cat Williams said in his comedian, he's mad at breakfast, like he's mad at bacon. He's that mad already this early in the morning. I'm here, as Sean said, I'm here for all of it. And I'm, we West Coast. That's where we from. Vallejo in the house.
Yeah.
This is what we do. And I'm glad he's about it.
Sorry, I didn't mean to step on you there, but I feel like, maybe we'll see what happened. Everyone remembers Nas and Jay-Z, Ether. And when Nas came out with Ether, there was they were able to make up. And I think it was Jay that kind of approached him. They were good again. And then they toured together. So
yes,
he didn't really take it off his playlist, and it's still on his essentials, but Ether's wild if you haven't heard it.
Yeah.
And just so you know, and this is not quite to that level, but I'm thinking of dropping a diss track called Carmichael Dave for you. So, it could be coming.
I could talk to you about girth.
Yeah. Sean, thank you very, very, very much. We appreciate it. Miss hanging out with you at the arena. But I know we'll see you soon, and I hope you have a great weekend.
You too, guys. Anytime.
Salute, my man.
Yeah. There we are. The one and only Sean Cunningham. How about that?
And let me say this, man. And I say this all the time about Sean. Sean is I credit myself for being throughout Sacramento at a lot of different places. Spend a lot of times I see Sean at different places, and from afar, sometimes he's working. You just step out of the way. I'm the type of person that gets in and out, Whitey. I'm 15, 20 minutes, shake some hands, kiss some babies, much love, support. You support your people in your community. Sean is the type of person that goes and he's actually doing the work. He's setting up the cameras. While I'm there hanging out, he's putting in the work and he's showing that. Mm-hmm. And he's better in our community. He's presenting our community and packaging our community, not only from a sports eye, but he's also including our community. I mean, he's been doing that for many years, as you alluded to. When I first interned here, Sean was moving and grooving here in Sacramento. When you're legendary. You're legendary, but Sean in his own right, man.
Yes.
He's pushing the narrative in Sacramento. We might have to put him in the Sports Hall of Fame soon.
Yeah. Well, he reminds me of what I was saying to you a couple days ago about Brunson. Brunson is like, he plays so hard. He's better. He doesn't have to play that hard.
Truth.
He's good enough where he doesn't have to, but he does. And Sean's the same. Sean doesn't have to work that hard. He's, he's earned the right not to, and he's good enough where you don't have to work that hard, but that's just his way.
Yeah, that's true, man. No, seriously. Solid, man. And I one of the things I've said over the last year, when you look at a show that Noriega's Blank Champs, the type of situation, it's a podcast, huge thing that's on Revolt Network. And one of the things he always talks about is giving people their flowers. That's the narrative that we're painting these days. And him and his co-host, they actually bring out like a humidor type box, with flowers in them. And it's like a plaque type situation. But I'm all about that. It's about giving people their flowers. We're not here forever, and so when you have an opportunity to do it, like I tell you all the time, I talk about Jerry Reynolds. We just had the G-Man. Those things make differences in our community. Mm-hmm. I'm City of Trees through and through. So when you have people that's legendary and you have great folks that do what they're supposed to do and do what they do and add, elements to this city, I give them love, man. So salute Sean, bro. Real, seriously.
Absolutely. We appreciate his time. Thank you for being with us. Don't go away. When we come back, the next coach of the Lakers will be JJ Redick. Next with the Drive Guys on Sactown Sports.